Hello everyone, this is Finance 101 Excel in Excel, and we are now in module number 2. In this video tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to complete the textbook project for this module. In order to do so, I'm going to follow the instructions in your textbook step by step. Occasionally, I may show you how to perform a certain task in an alternative way or even some additional tasks, but those will not be required. If we want to complete and format our project to look exactly like the one in the textbook, we want to follow the instructions that are numbered and circled in red if you have a hard copy of the textbook, or they will be shown with orange squares if you have the ebook version on MindTap. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, go ahead and log into your MindTap account. Make sure you find your course, Finance 101. We're going to open the course modules folder and open module 2. And here scroll down until you find the SAM textbook project. When I click on it, I will get a window with a set of instructions. Make sure that you read them carefully and then scroll down and click on Start. This will give you a new set of instructions. The first one is 1A. It tells you to download a file. So you're given a blank Excel file. Make sure you download it, save it to your computer, remember where you saved it, that destination folder, and do not change the name of the file provided. Just keep it as it is. The second step, 1B, contains the instructions for the project. So if I click on this link with the instructions, this is going to take me exactly to that section in the textbook where the step-by-step instructions for this particular project are provided. So I'm going to go ahead and maximize or increase the size of this window just so that I can see these figures a little bit bigger. And in this particular module, we're going to be working with a worksheet with formulas and functions. Figure 2.1 will show you what your spreadsheet should look like when you complete the project. So this is the output that we need to generate. As you can see, this is a salary report. This is for a company called Clapor Engineering. They are currently doing the salary report every 2 weeks and they're doing it manually. But as the company is growing, they think that a more efficient way to prepare this report would be in Excel. So as you can see, the information in the sheet has the employee names, the email address, is the number of dependents, the hours worked, the hourly pay rate, the gross pay, the federal tax, state tax, the tax rate, right, as a percent, the net paid, and also the hire date. We'll also see some statistics. At the bottom are totals, average, a highest, and a lowest value. All right, so that's what we're trying to achieve. Now, if you keep scrolling through the instructions, figure 2.2 will show you a very important document that we always need as our first step when constructing a worksheet. This is called the requirements document. So here you will have information regarding what is needed, and this report or document will be prepared by the person who has requested the worksheet. So the needs first, then we'll have a list of sources of data. In this case, the data is provided by the person who requested this spreadsheet, and it will contain the names of the employees, their email addresses, the number of dependents, the hours worked, and the hourly pay rate and hire dates. Next, let's go ahead and look at figure 2.3. This is a sketch which is really useful when trying to visualize what the output or your final result should look like, right? So it's a very good way to get a visual idea of the design of our worksheet. As you can see here, the entries that have a series of X's will represent text, so they're a figure that will be entered or formatted in Excel as text. All of those entries that have Z's or nines or dollar signs, percent sign, or even slashes, as the last column, will represent numbers, will be formatted as numbers. All right, so here I'll be able to show you this in more detail. As you can see, the last one has slashes because it is formatted as a date. So I have already opened my blank spreadsheet and I'm ready to start completing the project. Let's go ahead and take a look at the instructions in your textbook. I'm going to minimize the Excel window just so that I can show you the instructions. As you can see, I have them on a side-by-side screen, and I would recommend that you do this if you want to be following the instructions and then replicating those steps directly onto your spreadsheet. However, if you want to print out the textbook or you have a hard copy, you can just maximize the Excel spreadsheet and that way you can see it bigger. I'm going to use this method in this tutorial just so that you have a better view of the spreadsheet as I have maximized it. So let's take a look at the instructions. The first says entering the titles and numbers into the worksheet. So we're going to start with step number 1, which is to start Excel and create a blank workbook. We're always going to skip that step. We don't want to start with a new blank workbook. We want to use the one that we downloaded from MindUp and keep it the same name file. Step 2, if necessary, select cell A1, right? So that's the first cell. And we're going to type Klapor Engineering. Make sure that you capitalize each word. So we're gonna type that in the selected cell, which is A1, and then you can press enter or the arrow down to move to the next cell. Step 3 says type salary report in cell A2. So salary report in cell A2. And then again, you can press the arrow down or simply enter to move into the next cell down. Now we're gonna enter the column titles. So with cell A3 selected, that's where I am, we're going to type employee and then press the right arrow key to enter the column heading. So we're going to be moving towards the right as we are entering the column titles, right? The first one is employee. Second step, type email address, arrow to the side. In cell C3, we're going to type dependents, arrow to the right. In cell D3, we want to type hours. And then it says press Alt Enter to enter the first line of the column heading, and then we're going to type the word worked. In this cell, we want to have the title hours worked. So look at what happens if I just press enter. That's going to move me to the next cell down. However, I want to have hours worked as just the title of one single cell. So I'm going to click back on that cell D3. I want to click on my formula bar right after the letter S, right? So as you can see now, my mouse cursor or pointer is right after the letter S and the word hours. That means that that's where I would be inserting new text if I start typing again, right? So once I have my mouse cursor there, I can press Alt, Enter. And now you can type the word worked on the second line. So hours worked. As you can see, by using this option of Alt Enter, I was able to incorporate a new line into the cell, and I can decide where to end each line. This allows me to fit both words into one column with the same width as all the other ones. All right, we're gonna press arrow to the side, or you can go enter and go back to the cell that you need to, E3. And in E3, step number 5, we're going to type hourly. Again, Alt Enter, and in the next line, we want to type pay rate. Right, so hourly pay rate. As you can see here, I also use that Alt Enter option to create a second line and fit the entire title into that column. Now, an alternative to do this is to use the wrap text option. So let me show you how to do this. If I click on that cell E3, go ahead and right click this time and then press Format Cells. If we go to the Alignment tab, so across the top you have number, alignment, font, etc. click on the alignment tab. This cell has already been wrapped, right? Because we have the wrap text option already checked in. But go ahead and unmark it. I want to show you what would happen. It doesn't fit, right? Hourly pay rate doesn't fit. So what I can do is go back, format cells, alignment, and this time mark that option, wrap text. Okay. And Excel will do exactly the same. Would increase actually the height of that cell, of that row, in that entire row, in order to fit those 3 words in that particular cell. One advantage of using the Alt Enter option is that you can end each line where you want to. On the other side, if you use this wrap text option, Excel will decide where to cut that title in order to fit it depending on the width of your columns. So let's keep moving on to the next step. We were in step number 5. Let's go to step 6. We're going to press the arrow to the right, type gross pay. Our gross pay. Next, federal tax. Oh, I did a double D there. Federal tax to the right. We're in column H3. So step number 8, we want to type state tax. To the right, tax in percent, the net pay, and then hire date. Next, let's go ahead and enter the salary data. So in Excel, whenever we enter a field that is formatted as a text, you will see them aligned on the left-hand side of the column of each cell. And when we enter fields that are numbers, such as quantities, in this example, a tax rate, a number of dependents, or even a date, they will be considered numbers by Excel, and they're going to automatically align to the right of each column or each cell. So the data that we're going to be entering here is what was given to us, our source of data. According to the requirements document, we were given the employee name, the email address, the number of dependents, the hours worked, and the hourly pay rate, and the hire dates. So those are the fields that we're going to be entering for each of the 9 employees. So step 1 says select cell A4. So with the arrows going left, go ahead and click on cell A4. We want to type Altor, Benny. That's the name of the employee. Then press the arrow right to go to cell B4. And then it says click it actually twice because we're going to skip the email address. As I said, we're going to enter those later. So arrow to the side twice. Now we are under the dependents column. So we're in cell C4. Step 3 says enter the number 3 dependents. Right arrow. Now we're in cell D4. Step 3 says type 7450. So I'm going to type 74.50. Now, when I press enter here or the arrow to the right, notice what happens. You see the number aligns to the right hand side because that is the number, as opposed to Altor Benny, the name of the employee, which is aligned to the left, is text. Now in the case of cell D4, this number, the other thing that I also notice is that even though I type in 74.50, when I press enter, Excel eliminated that last 0. And the reason is that Excel does that, deletes those zeros, as 74.5 is the same as 74.50, unless you format it to have a specific number of decimal places. We're going to learn how to do that later. You can choose how many decimal places you want to display. But Excel will automatically be suppressing any of those extra zeros. All right, next step, go to the right. We're on cell E4. We are on step number 4. Type 35.25 in cell E4. So 35.25. Arrow to the right. Then click cell K4. So we're gonna go all the way to the end. And we're gonna type in 9/5/10. Look what's gonna happen here when I press enter or the right arrow. Excel changed that year from 10 to 2010, so a 4-digit date, a 4-digit year, right? I'm using the following format. I'm using month, so 2M/day/year, right? I enter my year as a 2-digit number, but Excel changed it to a year, right? 4 Ys or 4 digits. Why did it do that? Well, the convention is that if Excel sees a year with a value below 30, it will assume that is 2000 something. For example, in this case, I enter the value of 10 is less than 30. So Excel assumed that the year that I wanted to enter was 2010. If I enter a value above 30, for example, 50, Excel will assume that is in the 1900s. So I would write 1950, right? So in order to avoid this issue of Excel potentially guessing the wrong year that you want to enter, just get used to enter a 4-digit year, right? With this format, month, day, year with a 4-digit number. All right, so I'm gonna delete that. I don't need to have that. I just wrote it down so that I could explain the format for that day that I'm using. In the very last step in this series, step number 6, we're gonna be entering the payroll data as in table 2.1. We have already done it for the first employee, but we have 8 more to enter. So let's go ahead and move to the left-hand side of our spreadsheet with your left arrow. Go back to column A. As you can see, we already have 1 entry in row 4. We need to add 8 more employees, which will be entered in rows 5 to 12. We're going to be entering the exact same fields, the employee name, the number of dependents, hours worked, the hourly pay rate, and the hire date. Make sure that you follow, as I said, table 2.1 to find that data. You can go ahead and pause this video at this point. I will give you a few minutes to complete that table. When you're ready, go ahead and press play again. All right, so by now you should have entered all the data in table 2.1. Here is mine. I bet you were able to finish that a lot faster than I did, as you may have noticed. Typing fast and accurately is not one of my strengths, but here we are. I've completed mine. I bet you completed yours already. Let's go ahead and take a look at our data. So I've entered everything that was in table 2.1, but as you can see, mine looks a little bit different than table 2.1 in the textbook. I don't have the nice formatting yet. We're going to be adding that later. So right now, if I go back to the textbook, my table looks more like figure 2.4. I'm going to click on that figure to show you what it looks like in your textbook. All right, so here it is. So this is what our table currently looks like, right? We have all the data, but it's not yet formatted. Now, in our next step, we're going to learn how to use the Flash Fill Excel feature. So what is this feature? It really reads patterns in your data that you enter, and Excel will try to guess what the next entry should be. It will either fill in a column with the guesses or format the data in that predicted pattern. So how could you use this function? For example, let's say that I have a column with unformatted phone numbers, right? Just the digits, no parentheses for the area code, no dash after the first 3 digits. I really want to enter a new column with that formatted data. So I could start adding those numbers, typing them in that formatted option with the parentheses and a dash after the first 3 digits. I only have to do 2 or 3. And this Flash Fill feature in Excel will guess what the pattern is and will guess what the next entry should be. So Excel will automatically fill in that column, which is very useful if I say have 500 phone numbers to format. I'm only going to be able to do 2 or 3, and then Excel will do the rest for me. This function can also be used to concatenate or to separate cells. For example, let's say that I'm given a worksheet that has employee names and just one cell. So maybe it is formatted as last name, comma, first name, but I really want to separate, have the last names on one column, the first names on another. So I can use this flash fill feature in order to separate and convert that one column into two separate columns. We can also use it to do the opposite, concatenate two values, which essentially means to merge them, right? So maybe I was given the data with last name in one column, first name in another column, and I really want to have them together, first name, last name in just one cell. I can use this function to concatenate or merge those two values, right? To merge two columns into one. Sometimes Excel will predict the wrong pattern, maybe a good pattern, but not the one that you wanted, and that's okay. In that case, just undo that action, type in a few more examples to see if Excel is able to guess the pattern that you were really looking for. So let's go ahead and apply this Excel feature to our example. We're going to use flash fill to fill in column B with the email addresses. So go ahead and follow the steps. Step 1 says click on cell B4 to select it. So there we are, B4, and type in the first email address is baltor@example.com. All right, if you start looking through those email addresses from table 2.1, you'll see that there's a very clear pattern. All the usernames are the initial of the first name, then the last name @example.com, right? So if I type, let's say one more, I'm gonna click the arrow down to move to cell B5, Linda Fox. So L for the first name, Fox @example.com. All right, press enter to move to the next row, and we're gonna do one more, J. All right, look what happened. Did you see that? When I started typing the third one, I didn't even have to finish it. I just typed J. And now you see in this lighter shade of gray letters or font that Excel is giving me some suggestions, right? It's not telling me this is what it should be, but it's in a different lighter color because it's telling me, is this what you're trying to do? Initial of the first name, last name @example.com. So I'm going to check them. The third one seems to be correct. J. Hanfield @example.com. B. Jamie @example.com. All right, they all look correct. So Excel did a great job, predicted my pattern, and did the work for me, filled in that whole column. So imagine if this worksheet had had 1,000 employee names. All I had to really do was to fill in the first two, maybe even the third one, and then Excel would do the rest of the work for me. Isn't that a great feature? Super efficient. It will increase your productivity. So once I see that suggestion, all I have to do is press the enter key, and then all the numbers, all the other values will be filled in that column. All right, sometimes it'll take for you to type a lot of examples before Excel can predict that certain pattern. If you don't want to wait, here's another option. And this is how your textbook wants you to do this. So I'm going to undo this. Click undo. All right, I'm just going to type in the first two. Right? So say you typed in only the first two email addresses. So I'm going back to the steps in the textbook. This is how you want to do it when you're submitting your project. Type in the first two email addresses, and then the instruction says select the range of cells B4 to B12. Why? Because that is the range of cells where I want to fill in, right? I want Excel to predict the pattern and fill in that range of cells. So once I have my range selected, we're gonna click on Data, one of the tabs across the menu on the top, and then look at the ribbon. One of the groups here is Data Tools. The icon at the top, and the ribbon may look a little bit different depending on what version you have, but in my ribbon, it's the icon right at the top. It looks like an Excel spreadsheet with a little flash symbol, and when I put my mouse over it, I'm not clicking yet, I'm just putting my mouse over that icon. I can see a brief description of what this feature does, and also I see the shortcut, Control E. So I'm gonna try to remember that because this is a super, super helpful feature. And in the future, I don't have to remember to go to Data, Data Tools, Flash Fill. Instead, I can just remember, oh, Control E, right? So at this point, you can either click on that icon or press Control E on your keyboard. I'm gonna click on the icon since I'm right there. And as you can see, Excel did the work for me and it filled in that entire column, right? Isn't that great? Now I don't have to type in all those email addresses. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next section. We're gonna enter the row titles now. So step 1 says select cell A13 and we're gonna type totals. Press enter or the down arrow to go to the next row. Step 2, type highest. Enter, type lowest in cell A15 and then average. All right, so we are done with that step. We're entering our row titles for the statistics, high, low, average, and then the totals at the bottom of the sheet. Our next task is to change the sheet tab and color. Step 1 says double click on sheet 1 tab. So at the bottom left corner here, you see the name of this specific spreadsheet on our workbook, right? A worksheet on the workbook. So if we double click on it, we can enter the sheet tab name, salary report. And we want to capitalize that R. Press enter. All right, next step, step 3 says, step 2, right click the sheet tab to display the shortcut menu. So I'm going to right click on it. And here we want to go to tab color. We're going to change the color of this tab. The instruction says once you see the tab, color gallery, we're going to go to one of the colors in theme colors and we want to click blue accent 1 is on column number 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, first row. There it is. If I just hover my mouse over that little blue square, I can just check that it says the name says blue accent 1. So go ahead and click on it and there we are. So we have a name for our tab and we also have the desired color. The last step in this section, step 4, asks you to save the worksheet. There are specific instructions with respect to the file name that you should use in your textbook, but as usual, ignore that file name as we are using MindTap to submit our assignments, so we want to keep the name of the file that you've been using so far. But it's a good idea to go ahead and save. So go to File and press Save. All right. You want to get in the habit of saving your work every few steps to make sure that you don't lose any of your work. So let's move on to the next section. Our main goal in this chapter is learning how to use formulas and functions. And also we're going to be adding some formatting skills. So let's concentrate on formulas right now. So in the next columns from F to J, we're going to be making calculations. We're going to be using Excel formulas. So what are formulas in Excel? They are essentially mathematical equations that will be linked to a certain value that you enter or to cell references where you have entered your data already. And they will always start with an equal sign to enter the equation, and then they will also have mathematical operators such as the sum or addition or subtraction, multiplication or division symbols. So in your textbook, you were given a set of formulas for each of these next columns for gross pay, federal tax, state tax, the tax rate in percent form, and net pay. So let's go ahead and start entering those formulas. Step 1 says click on cell F4. So that's where I am, cell F4. We're going to enter gross pay. And the formula for gross pay is hours worked times the hourly pay rate. So essentially, we're going to be multiplying our column D with our column E. So I'm going to show you a way in which I can do this calculation in a very inefficient way first. But a lot of people do it this way thinking that they're using Excel efficiently. We're going to find out that that's not really how we use Excel efficiently. So if I do the following, if I press the equal sign and I type in those numbers, 74.5, the multiplication symbol times the hourly pay rate, so 35.25. So I'm just multiplying D4 times E4, right? The hours worked times the hourly pay rate. Go ahead and press enter. You will get an answer. Right now, I'm using Excel simply as a calculator, right? I'm just computing that. Excel will give me the correct answer, but that is not a very efficient way to set up your spreadsheet. You're not modeling when you're making those calculations. Why? Because let's say that as I'm finishing my table, I realize, oops, I made a mistake. When I look at the table, the number of hours worked for this employee was actually 80 hours instead of 74.5. So look at what happens. I'm going to click on that cell and I'm going to change that 74.5 to 80. because I made a mistake, right? I want you to keep your eye on cell F4 where we have our result, right? Our output, our calculation. So I'm going to press 80, enter. Did that total change? No, it's still the same, right? 2,626.125. So that is a problem when we enter calculations as values. We type in the values. It's not a dynamic model. The whole purpose of using Excel is that all your calculations must be linked to a cell reference so that if you have to change them, whether you made a mistake or you want to see what happens when you change an input, your calculations will automatically be updated. So I'm going to press undo, but on the top left corner, the arrow going back, just to go back to my original number of hours worked, 74.5, and I'm going to delete that equation or function that I had entered earlier. This time we're going to do it correctly. We're going to do it in an efficient way. So step 1, now we're following the instructions in the textbook. It says in cell F4, press the equal sign and then type the names of the cells. So the cells are D4 times E4, right? I'm again multiplying those two cells. Notice that interestingly Excel highlights those two cells that I referenced in different colors, so I can immediately visualize what am I multiplying. I'm multiplying those two numbers, the one that I see in gray and that red color, right? Press enter and you get that exact same result. But look at what happens now if I realize that I made that mistake earlier and changed my number of hours worked to 80. Pay attention to what happens to cell F4. I'm going to press enter and that number is automatically updated. Isn't that great? That is the great advantage of using Excel. So undo, go back to the original number of hours worked. I'm going to show you one more trick. Instead of typing in the names of the cells, I could actually click on them instead of having to type D4 times E4. So let's do it a third way. I'm going to press the equal sign. This time, I'm just going to click on cell D4. There we go. When I click or reference a certain cell, you're going to see something called a marquee, which is that moving blue dotted line moving around that cell that I selected. Times, and I'm going to click on cell E4. Exactly the same formula, exactly the same result. Press enter, right? Same result. But this time I saved time by not having to type in the names of the cells. Instead, I am just clicking on them, right? So that's called using the point mode. All right, so we are done with that particular formula. Let's go ahead and move on to enter formulas using the point mode. I just demonstrated how to do that. So we're gonna repeat that mode by calculating the federal tax. My formula says that the federal tax is calculated as 26% of the difference between our gross pay and our dependents times 22.16. All right, so it's a long formula. So let's go ahead and enter it. So we're gonna be on cell G4. Press the equal sign. Type 0.26. 26% is our federal tax rate for this employee. And then go ahead and open parentheses. So we're beginning our formula. We're going to use the point mode. So we want to reference cell F4, right, where we have entered our gross pay. So click on it. Next, we continue with the formula. We want to subtract. So enter minus. The formula says the number of dependents. So cell C4. Click on C4. And again, you see that marquee around that cell. Times 22.16, and then you want to close parentheses. Press the equal sign. All right, let's see. This is a good experiment here. It says, I found a typo in your formula. I probably forgot to enter that parentheses, but it is asking me, do you want to accept this correction? I look at the formula, and that's exactly what I want it to look like, so just press OK. And that's going to happen often, that you may forget a parentheses, so just make sure that the suggested formula is what you want it to look like and just accept that correction. If not, then cancel it and type it in again. All right, let's make sure that our result is correct. We get, let's see, 665.5077. Perfect. All right, let's keep moving on. So this time on step 3, we're going to calculate the state tax. The formula for the state tax is equal to 5.5%, so 0.055 times the gross pay, or what we have entered in cell F4. So enter your equal sign, type 0.055 times cell F4, our gross pay. Press enter, all right, and our answer is 144.4369. Excellent. I'm going to keep moving on to cell I4 for the tax. We're going to calculate the tax rate. So let's look at the formula. Our formula for the tax rate is the sum of federal tax plus the state tax divided by the gross pay. So I'm going to enter the equal sign, open parentheses. We want federal tax, so G4, plus state tax, H4, close parentheses. And we want to divide that with a forward slash by our gross pay, so cell F4. All right, press enter. All right, so the answer is 0.308418. And by the way, you may see a different number of decimals on your spreadsheet depending on what current format you have in, but we are going to fix that later, so don't worry about it if you're seeing a different number of decimal places that are displayed on your textbook. All right, one thing also that I wanted to mention is when you're in a cell, say that you are at the end of that equation. Notice what I did there. To make a modification to that equation, I click on the cell, but then I have to go and click on that formula bar, right? That bar where I have entered my equal sign right here. That's what we call the formula bar, and that's where you would edit that formula if you have to make any changes. So I have my cursor at the end of cell F4. Typically, I would press the arrow going right to move to the next cell, to the right, net pay in this case. But if I do that in this case, it doesn't work. So I have two options. I can press enter, or this green check mark here, that's enter. That will take me to the cell right below it. Or if I want to move to the right, I can press the tab key, which is on the top left corner of your keyboard. All right, so then I move to the right. So now we are on net pay. Let's take a look at the formula for net pay. So to calculate net pay, our formula is gross pay. So enter the equal sign, cell F4, minus the sum of, so open parentheses, your federal tax, so cell G4, plus your state tax, so cell H4, close parentheses, press enter. All right, 1816.18. Make sure that that number is correct. It looks like it's correct. All right, perfect. So now that we have entered the formulas for the first row, we could go ahead and enter it for every single row and column, but that would take a lot of time. So here's another great advantage of Excel. We can copy these formulas because we have linked them to cell references. Instead of typing in the values, like I did at the very beginning, I have used cell references instead. So Excel is super smart. I can copy these formulas down, and instead of copying the values, it's going to copy the equations or formulas in the same way that I enter them, with the difference that it will change those cell references accordingly, right? So in my formulas in the first row, they all have a number 4 because all those numbers are taken from row 4, right? What differs is the values, such as the tax rates, 5.5% or 26%, and also the letters of the cells because the columns are different, but they all have row 4. So look what I'm going to do. I'm going to select that range of cells, so F4 to J4, right? Those are the calculations that I just made. And now I want to be able to copy all of these formulas down all the way to row 12. So once I have selected this, I can go ahead and press the fill handle button at the bottom right corner of that range. You'll see that there is a darker square in the corner of that range. And I'm just gonna left click to grab it and then kind of drag it down all the way to row 12. Release, and everything will be automatically updated and copied down. Just to check, let's go to gross pay for the second employer, so cell F5. As you can see, now the rows, the reference are D5 times E5, so it is correct. Federal tax, exactly the same formula, but whenever I have a cell reference, now I have F5 and C5, so they all have row 5. If I go to gross pay for the third employee on row 6, D6 times E6. So everything will be referenced to the values entered for row 6 and so on. All right, so we have finished entering all these formulas. Let's go ahead and save our work one more time. File, save, just to make sure we don't lose everything we just did. Our next step is to determine the totals for each column using the AutoSum function. So let's go ahead and start following the step. Number 1 says display the home tab. So there we are. And we want to select the cell to contain the sum. So cell D13 in this case, right? We're going to add up all the hours worked. And let's go ahead and click the AutoSum button right there. It looks like a summation sign, like a Greek letter. So Excel automatically suggests the range of cells that I'm supposedly adding up. Excel is suggesting cells D4 to D12, so that looks about right. As you can see, the argument, which is that range or matrix of cells inside the parentheses, D4 and D12 is what's suggested right now. It seems correct. So you can go ahead and press either this green check mark next to the formula bar, that's the enter button, or you can just hit enter on your keyboard. All right, so 616.75, that looks perfect. Next, we're going to do it for the cells F13, G13, and H13, right? So we want to add up gross pay, federal tax, state tax, federal tax, and state tax. Let's go ahead and take those 3 cells. So we're selecting our range of cells because we want to auto sum each of those columns, and I can go ahead and click auto sum again. As you can see, those 3 totals are automatically calculated. I'm just going to click on each of them just to double check that Excel did it correctly. And I always recommend that you do this whenever you use copy and paste into several cells or columns or rows at the same time. Just double check. You don't have to check all of them. You can pick a few randomly just to make sure that it's being done correctly. All right, so in cell F13, the range is sum from F4 to F12, seems correct. Then G4 to G12 and H4 to H12. Right. The next one is tax. I don't really want to add up that whole column because look at all those rates. They're all about 30%. If I add up that column, I'm going to end up with a number greater than 1. Obviously, that's going to be more than 100%. That wouldn't make sense, right? So that is just not something we want to calculate just because it doesn't make sense mathematically. We do want to, however, calculate the total for the next column, the net pay. So I can do the exact same thing here. Just put your mouse on that destination cell, J13, and click AutoSum, enter. All right, so we are done with that step. Next, we're going to calculate the tax percentage. Since I skipped that particular cell, I13, I didn't have any values in there. I didn't want to auto sum that. As I explained, it wouldn't make sense. What I want to do instead here is to calculate the implied tax rate paid based on those totals, right? So I really just want to copy the formula that I have used to calculate the tax rate on each of the cells in that column, which, let's take a look at it. I'm going to put my mouse over there. So it's G12 plus H12. So we took the federal tax plus the state tax, and we divided that by F12, which is the gross pay. So I don't have to type that formula again. I can just use the fill handle. So that bottom right corner, that green little corner, left click on it, grab it and drag it to the next cell. Okay, I'm going to click on that cell just so that I double check. So yes, I use, everything is on G now, right? G13, H13, and F13, right? Everything is being taken from row 13, and I'm adding the federal tax plus the state tax, dividing it by the gross pay. All right, so we got a tax rate of 31.0932. Looks correct on my textbook. Let's move on to the next section. So our next step is to calculate some statistics. For this particular case, we're going to be calculating the highest value, the lowest value, and the average. We're going to be using Excel functions now, right? Functions that are already pre-made in Excel. There are 5 different ways in which we can enter functions in Excel. Be sure to study all those different alternatives in your textbook in this section. I'm going to show you 3 of them with each of these 3 next statistics. So let's go back to the steps. Step 1 says select the cell to contain the maximum number, which will be cell C14, right? So we want to start with the maximum number of dependents. All right, the instructions say click the insert function button. So this is the first way in which we can enter a formula or function. I have my cell, my mouse, right, on my destination cell. This is where I want my output to be. So next, I'm going to click on Insert Function. You see it up here next to the formula bar. It says FX. If I put my mouse over it, I'm going to see that it's called Insert Function. So click on it. You're going to get this dialog box with several options, right? I have the most recently used here. And if I scroll down through all of those, I see the maximum function, which is what I'm looking for. The maximum function will allow me to find the highest value in a range of cells. If you don't see it there, you can go ahead and just type the name of the function in this search box, press go, and you will find it there, okay? Or if you didn't have it in your most recently used, you could also click on that drop-down menu and go by category, right? So for example, one of the categories here is financial. I use those functions in that category a lot in my finance classes, all right? So that's how you would find the different functions. Now, when you click on a certain function, we're gonna use the maximum. So there it is. I'm going to press OK once it's selected in blue, and I get the next box where I'm going to enter the arguments in my function, right? The arguments is the range of cells that I want Excel to use in order to calculate that maximum value. So I'm going to left click on this to move this box out of the way so I can look at my spreadsheet, right? The instruction says that we want to select the range C4 to C12. So you have two options here. You can type it in, C4 to C12. Excel is suggesting C4 to C13, but I don't want C13 in there. That's my totals row, right? So I could just quickly click on there, go backspace and change that to a 12. Or I'm gonna delete it. I'll show you another alternative. I could just select with my mouse that range, C4 to C12. Notice that I'm putting on the box that says number 1. That is my argument that I want Excel to use in order to calculate that maximum value. Also notice that when you select a certain function, there's a brief description of what the function does, so that if you are unfamiliar with a new function, you can scroll through all of them. If I'm looking for highest value and I see max, it's like, okay, that sounds like what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna click on it, read the description, and I see that the description says returns the largest value in a set of values. That sounds exactly what I'm looking for, right? So then I will select it. In just a few weeks, you're going to be familiar with a lot of functions and you're going to remember the name. So next time you need the maximum function, you can just type max in your formula bar. You don't need to search for it again. So which option do you use? It will depend on your typing skills and the ability that you have to remember the names of all these functions. That's how you will decide which method to use, whatever is easier or more convenient for you. All right, so we're done typing our range. Click OK. And there we have the highest value is 3, right? The maximum number of dependents among all of these employees was 3. All right, next, let's go ahead and we're going to move on to the lowest value. So I want to be on cell C15, right? This time we're going to use a slightly different method. Some of these functions, the most basic one, maximum, minimum, which is the function we use for lowest value, and average, are also going to be in the auto sum button under the editing group, right? So if you click on that little arrow to display the drop-down menu, you'll see that we have the sum, the average, the maximum, and the minimum. So I could use that option as well, right? So my instructions this time says, click on that auto fill function, and we're going to select the minimum function since we are looking for the lowest value. So click on it, and then here Excel will display the formula bar. It is suggesting C14. We don't want that. We want this whole range. So I'm going to use my mouse left click to select C4 all the way to C12. Right now, that's what's in the argument. You can see it up here in this section in the formula bar as well. So press enter, and that's it, right? We have our lowest value, which is 0. And lastly, let's go ahead and do our average. So we are located on cell C16. This is where we're going to enter the average for that particular column. The instruction says, go ahead and type $AV, right? So the function for average in Excel is called average, not surprisingly, right? So here we're going to enter this function in a third different way. This is another alternative. As you can see, I recall that the average function was something similar to average. So I start typing AV, and Excel is now suggesting, oh, here are some AV functions, right? Functions that start with the letters AV. So I see average, the second down, and that's exactly the one I want. So I'm just gonna double click on that one, and there it is. So now I just have to enter my range. I can type it C4 to C12, or what I like to do, because I'm not a very accurate typer, I just use my mouse. That way I don't make a mistake. I can see what I'm highlighting. C4, C12, I can look at the formula bar, see that it's being typed correctly, and then you can either close your parentheses and press enter, or if you just press enter, Excel will add that parentheses for you if you forget. So my average is 1.4444, right? So that is the average number of dependents. Great, so we're done with those three statistics. Now we gotta do this for the entire table, right? But we're not gonna be typing this for every single column or row, right? You know that we can easily copy formulas to different columns or to different rows. So in this next step, we're going to copy a range of cells across columns to an adjacent range, and we're gonna use the fill handle. So my instructions are, number one, select the source range. All right, so my source range is C14 to C16. Those are the three functions that I want to copy: my maximum, my minimum, and my average. And this time I'm going to grab that fill handle, the bottom right corner, that little green square, hold it and drag it all the way to column J. All right, they've all been calculated. Wonderful. I can go ahead and just click on a few of them to make sure. Let's see, in that one, F14, I have maximum from F4 to F12. That seems about right. Let's see here, in the state tax, we have average from H4 to H12. Everything looks good. All right, so just keep checking a few more just to make sure that everything worked. Now, I'm going to quickly go to this cell I16 because I have a problem with this one. It really doesn't make sense to calculate an average of all of these tax rates. It's just a mathematically invalid calculation, right? So we are going to delete that just because it doesn't make sense mathematically, as I said. So let's go ahead and delete that. And then we're going to make a pause here. This is a good time to take a break. There will be a second part. But let's go ahead and save our work one last time. File, save. All right, I'll see you in the next video.